This is Conversations with a Citizen. I'm your host, Tia Carol Jones. I'm here today with Karen Yarbrough, who is the clerk of Cook County.
I am.
Yes. She is the first African American and woman to serve as the clerk of Cook County. She oversees one of the largest consolidated clerk's offices in the United States. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Me. So I started off, like many other people, not knowing what I wanted to do in life. And, sometimes you just kind of evolve, you're looking for a place to be and, how can I make some impact and make things better than they are. So I started off in nursing school, if you can believe that. And my folks are entrepreneurs. And so it was just what I needed to do because I knew how to do it. So I became an entrepreneur. I was a realtor, an insurance agent. I opened my insurance agency in the 70s. And so I was in business for a very long time and got involved in the community. Being in the insurance and real estate business, what I found is there's a symbiotic relationship between the two of them. I mean, obviously, if you own a home, you have to insure it. And so, but it also did something else for me. It brought me very, very close to community. And that's where I got my foray, actually, into government and politics.
For people who don't know, what does the clerk do?
I don't know what the clerk doesn't do. Okay, they've just added duties to my responsibility, but it's not something that I wasn't aware of. So the clerk oversees, obviously, elections, and that's usually what people know about, and that's in suburban Cook County. But we also do vital records, so birth records, death records, marriage licenses, and things of that nature. And so we get a plethora of people coming into our office, looking for those documents because people need their birth certificates and things. So we also do taxes, real estate, and they just added recording operations. And I'll tell you a little bit about recording operations. So before I came to the clerk's office, I was the Cook County Recorder of Deeds. And there was an initiative that was placed on the ballot a few years ago to consolidate these two offices. And while I did not think it was a good idea at the time, we've done it now. So, and the whole idea was to save the taxpayers money. I'm a taxpayer, you're a taxpayer, so we're all looking for those savings. But they did not give me a plan in which to do it. So we had to kind of do it ourselves, figure it out. I mean, two big offices, the Recorder of Deeds office for Cook County is the second largest office in the United States. Okay. And then the clerk's office was the third largest clerk's office in the United States. Elections on its own is huge. I mean, for Cook County. I mean, absolutely huge. So to add all of these things together, and I think some of the folks just figured, well, they're just pushing paper around, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Housing, real estate, recordings, elections, taxes, we do it all.
And so that was in December of 2020 when the clerk's office took over.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You kind of talked about it, but why was the change made?
Well, I can tell you the history of it. Former Cook County Commissioner Quigley came up with this transformation plan a number of years ago. And I reached out to him because I wanted to know, okay, what is this plan? Because he did not get an opportunity to implement the plan. And he just told me, he said, Karen, I just felt like I wasn't doing enough as a commissioner. And I wanted to put some work in and see if we brought these taxing bodies together, if we brought, kind of consolidated some things in Cook County, would it really save people money? So he had a plan really to bring the taxing organization together. But he settled on the Recorder Deeds office and the clerk's office. And the whole idea was centered around efficiencies and the savings of dollars. but he forgot to leave the roadmap to get there. So, I put the S on my chest and started down the road of getting it done.
So then how does the clerk's office play a role in the property tax system?
So we play a small role, but a large role. And let me tell you what that is. All of the taxing bodies throughout Cook County, and there are a number of them. So if you're talking about your park districts, your library districts, your school districts, all of them, they have to pass a levy. So they pass a levy and then they send those documents to us. And then it's our job in the midst of this, so because you have the assessor's office, you have the treasurer's office, you have the board of review, and each one of them has a role in this. Our role is to bring all of those documents together, meaning all of those levies, make sure all of the taxing bodies have their levies in, and then we come up with a formula to, what it's going to cost, and then we send it on to the treasurer's office. So it's an important role that we serve, and I don't think many people know, what we do as far as that's concerned. We have a CPA who's over that area and an attorney, and it's important that we get those numbers right. Now, the board of review and the assessor's office, they certainly have their role, because once they get their information, it's their job to, the taxpayers want to know, is this fair? And I think you've seen over the time that, people have real concerns about how we're being taxed in Cook County, and the fact that we have so many taxing districts. I mean, can they be consolidated? I say they can be in many cases. They can be. That's a conversation for another time. Okay. But everybody wants to save money.
Absolutely. You were an Illinois state representative for 12 years. Why did you want to move the county government?
Well, let me tell you why I wanted to go to the state level.
Okay.
I ran for a state representative in '97 with the idea, I had been successful in business, and what I found, in talking to my clients is government has a huge role in our lives, and why not be at the table, at the real table, where decisions are being made about the what, where, when, why, and who. And I just figured that this was a good time for me to make the transition. So I ran the first time and I lost. I ran the second time and I won, and I was there for 12 years with the idea of really only staying for maybe about 10 years to really get a steeping in state government, to understand how it works and what have you. But while I was there, I got a chance to pass some really great legislation. I passed the bill that abolished the death penalty in Illinois, which was a monumental task. I passed the bill who regulated smoking in public places. And that's why nobody can come into even this studio and light up a cigarette, because their rights stop where mine began, right? So that was a monumental task as well. So I passed a lot of legislation around housing because I really care about that whole issue of housing. Housing is foundational. Each one of us will leave this place today and go home somewhere. And housing policy, I established a housing committee when I was a state representative, and all of the legislation dealing with housing came through that committee. So what I have seen over that 10 years or 12 years that I was there, housing policy has continued to evolve. And if you look at some of these policies over the years, what has happened with housing, especially for African Americans who left the South to come north to establish, their lives here in the South side of Chicago and in the West side of Chicago, we weren't treated very fairly, and government was against us. That is also, and I'd love to come back on the show and talk about housing discrimination and policy. So I wanted to do something about that. So one of the initiatives actually at the county level that they passed was the discrimination against people who have housing vouchers or who get their their housing payments from somewhere other than, cash. And so they took care of that at the county level. And now at the state level, they have this. Now, I actually introduced the law, but couldn't get it passed. Couldn't get it passed when I was there. But I was glad to be at the table, having a conversation about why it's important to not discriminate against people who have something other than, maybe it's child support, maybe it's Social Security, whatever it is. I mean, you should be able to use, those benefits are there for us to use, so that you can have some kind of quality of life. People who are spending over 50% of their income for housing, it's just plain wrong. How are they supposed to live? So, long story, but I'm happy to come back and talk about that as well, because housing is foundational. But I made the leap to the county. I figure you do what you can, where you can, while you can, for as long as you can, but it was never my intention to just nest in Springfield.
Okay.
Back to the housing policy stuff. The recorder of deeds, he was getting ready to retire, and here was a great opportunity for me to jump from the state to the county. And it also, I remember getting a call from Stephanie Neely. She used to be the treasurer for City of Chicago. She called me up. I was a state rep. She said, "Karen, there's something going on here." She said, "Somebody stolen my home." And I'm like, "Hello? What are you talking about?" She said, "Karen, it's not really they didn't pick up the house and take it. But what they did do is they changed the name on my deed." And I'm like, "How do they do that? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" She says, "You guys got to pass some kind of legislation in Springfield and do something about this." Well, I never heard of that. I mean, I've been a realtor since the 70s. I mean, talk to me about discrimination. Talk to me about any number of things, but somebody stole your home? Really? Well, people's homes were being stolen regularly on paper. And maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal when you say it like that, but go try and get a mortgage or get a second mortgage, or go try to, sell your home. And you go and you look at the deed and it's not even in your name. Wow. I said, I'm going to the county. If the people will have me, I'm going to the county. I want to do something about this. So they had a property, what they called it a different name, but we called it a property fraud department.
Okay.
We established that department, and we actually did outreaches, especially on the west side of Chicago and on the south side of Chicago. And what we found is, through our advocacy and education, we were able to help people to understand that, first of all, when you are at the closing table, you get your deed. You don't have to go pay some deed reseller $250 to get a piece of paper. You can get it from our office, for $10, okay? Or if you want a certified copy, I think it's maybe $15. So I saw so many things and so much that we could do there, on the advocacy side. I mean, there's a job there to do, but we expanded that job because, and we expanded it as it relates to veterans, because we also, people don't know this as well, as it relates to veterans, we are the repository for their DD-214s. And if you're a veteran, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's their separation papers. And it's good for all kinds of benefits that they get. We have those documents in our office, and people call us all the time, especially when somebody passes away and they want a military funeral, or if they're trying to get educational benefits or home benefits. So when people think about the Recorder of Deeds office, they just figure we record deeds. We do so much more than that. But the property fraud was something that was happening, especially South Side and West Side, especially to people of color, because they weren't educated and weren't able to advocate for themselves. So we went to work, and I'm very proud of the work that we did there. The advocacy work to me, is the center of government for me and what we do. I love that work. I love opening up the ears and eyes of people so that they can advocate for themselves. They would much rather, you can call an attorney and you can pay an attorney, but doesn't it feel better when you can find the information yourself, or somebody shares it with you, so that you can do the best by you and your family? So that's what I do, and that's what I love doing.
And speaking of the work of the recorder of deeds, how did you confront that property fraud?
Very boldly.
Okay.
Very boldly. There are what's called sovereign citizens that would come into our office, and they would just bring a quitclaim deed in and file it. We confronted them. We first of all taught our frontline cashiers and recorders what to look for.
Okay.
And then when they saw something that didn't look quite right, we would refer them to the fraud department. The fraud department then knew exactly what they were looking for. They have been trained. They know, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, they know when it's a duck. So we would frustrate these people by asking them. They weren't used to being confronted. They weren't used to being asked questions. Well, wait a minute. Why, you're not the owner of this property. How did this? They weren't used to that.
Okay.
And so we trained our staff to look for this. We put people in jail for doing this kind of thing. If you can just imagine that this crime that's being committed, and I know it's not a high profile crime, but it really impacts the least of us. And even somebody like Stephanie Neely, she's not a stupid lady. She's a very smart woman, and for it to happen to her would suggest to me that it could happen to anybody. So we're continuing that work. We have a fraud department even now, and they are very aggressive, and in the recorders section of the clerk's office now, you just can't come in there and expecting business as usual. It's going to be business as business.
What are some of the ways you've used your years of experience to advocate for the community?
I have a number of tools in my tool belt, and I think that where I got my start. I think when I told you I went to nursing school. Well, guess what? That's still in my head, and I know those things, and so I can apply them whenever something comes up dealing with health. Okay, I'm a realtor, and so in my job as a recorder in the clerk's office, I can use that tool. As a person that's an entrepreneur, I'm going to run, I don't want to say that I'm going to run government like a business, because you cannot. However, let me just say that since I started the business, I hired people, I trained people, so I have experience in that area. So, running this office is no big deal the way I look at it. I hold people accountable. I assemble a team of people who are at the top of their game in the different areas that we have. I want the best people working in government, and I hold them accountable. I know that government has a bad name, especially as it relates to service. And so service is way at the top of my list. Can you get a birth certificate somewhere else? No. You gotta get it from my office. So I want to make sure that the people who are working in that area are the best people and do the best job on behalf of the taxpayer. It's important to me, and I hold them accountable. So I'm using all my tools that are in my tool belt just to, and I think I'm the right person for this time to do this job.
How did COVID-19 change the way things were done at the clerk?
Oh my goodness. I had an election last year, 2 of them. So in the March election, in the primary, just to think about it. So, we have to have judges at the polling places. We had to have polling places that were open for people who wanted to vote. They didn't show up in many cases. Oh, yeah, right. So we did a lot of juggling. But we also I saw the human spirit involved in that particular election. People were afraid of the unknown. I had ordered almost $30,000 worth of PPE, the masks, the everything. It didn't show up. It was diverted to the first responders, and I get that. So when I say I saw the human spirit involved, I saw people who actually did show up to be judges. I saw people that brought their own masks. I saw people that brought their own wipes so they could wipe down the equipment. They were there. I saw a 16-year-old who was a judge for the first time actually woman that polling place because the other people didn't show up. That's the human spirit. That's the side of us that steps up when there's nothing else there and say, I'm going to do what I can. And so seeing that happen in the spring, of course, spring into fall, and here's November, the presidential election, we were prepared. We had everything that we needed for the November election. COVID-19 has been a horrible thing for communities across the country and across the world. But what it has done for us, you know how they say when you have lemons, you make lemonade. Well, we've learned a number of things, how to communicate without being face-to-face. We have implemented all kinds of new ways of doing business in our office that we're doing things online now, which is great, and people are open to doing it. Sometimes when you change things, it's difficult because people don't want to change. They'll tell you about, we've always done it this way, and I just kind of cringe when I hear that, because if there's a better mousetrap, I want it. So COVID changed the way we do business. COVID changed the way we have our staff meetings. COVID changed the way I communicate with the judges. Right after the election, I have a meeting with all of our judges that want to be engaged and involved. And we just implemented this a year ago. Even during the pandemic, we did it. I wanted to hear from those judges. I'm a hands-on person, much to maybe my staff's chagrin, but if I'm not hands-on and I don't know what's going on, if I'm not touching people, then when it gets to me, I don't know anything about it. People expect me to know things, and when I don't know it, they're like, well, you're the clerk, how come you don't know that? Well, I don't know everything, but I try to know. So on election days, I'm out there. I go to the polling places. I talk to the judges. I talk to the voters. We implemented, we've got 12 languages on the ballot now, where when I came into office, we only had 4. We're opening up the process. And let me just say this. I am so glad I live in Illinois. When I hear the missives from across the United States of what's going on as it relates to people having access to vote, what's happening in Florida and Texas and all of these states where they're trying to, suppress the vote, I'm glad that in Illinois, we are not doing anything like that at all. In fact, we are opening up the floodgates. Vote, people.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, just keep watching Karen Yarbrough because she's not through yet. Okay? She's not through yet. I tell you, I'm excited about life, quite frankly. I'm excited about advocacy work and about connecting people to the services that they pay for through their tax dollars. I'm excited about the young people who are coming into government now. And I hope that they'll understand that there are those of us who have paved the way for them. And they have to make their way as well. But there's some really great opportunities to learn from the past as they've got all kinds of ideas. But I just ask that they take a look at history so that they do not make some of the mistakes. Some of us have made mistakes in the past, but we've learned some great lessons as well. And it would be great if they would look at those lessons and keep it moving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember to make plans to join us again next week for Conversations with the Citizen, the place where real business can be heard.
It's a wrap. We're done.
Did they shut us down on Facebook?
Yeah, they did.
Oh no!
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is